Hello, network enthusiasts. Welcome to PyNet Labs. Today, we are discussing about OSI model. So I know most of us might have already know everything about there is about OSI model, but sometimes networking even takes the best of us. And I think like OSI is one of the most basic concepts of networking, and helping understanding the concepts of OSI is definitely going to help you in your networking journey. And sometimes it could be confusing. Okay, so I will try to relate OSI model with our real life scenario.
If you enjoyed the content of the video, don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe to our channel.
So that it could be easier for everyone to understand. Now, from the perspective of networking, OSI model can also help you not in understanding the concepts or the various process that happens in the network, but it could also helps you in understanding the troubleshooting process. Okay, so as a network engineer, you should be aware of the things that happens in your network so that you can better troubleshoot during outages or during any network problem. So let's begin. So today we are about to start OSI model. Okay. So we are about to start today OSI model. So OSI model, if we go about the description, it's a networking or network concept model, okay, that breaks down the whole communication process into 7 steps, or we can say layers. So we know like whenever we are trying to communicate with someone, so there is a lot of thing that is going on in the network. And for the beginner, it could be like really confusing to understand, to try to comprehend the various complex process. So just to make it simpler, OSI model has broken down this complex process of the communication into 7 layers. So for every organization to work properly, if an organization wants to work properly and to excel in what they're doing, they require some steps, okay, some proper documented steps. So OSI is just provides a well-documented procedures that helps manufacturers or the developers to create better and reliable communication infrastructure. So earlier, when there was a OSI model wasn't developed, so inter-vendor communication was not possible. That means devices from devices from different vendors were kind of like unable to communicate with each other. So if I explain it to you, suppose I have a machine of Apple, okay, I have a MacBook, and consider that someone, a friend of mine, might have a device of, let's say, Dell. Okay, so there are like both different manufacturer, and we both know like they are in the IT industry for quite some time. So they are known for developing various hardwares and softwares that come along with their product. So earlier, before the development of OSI model, all of these vendors, they kind of like used to create their own protocols. Okay, so they used to create their own protocols. So as a result, each of them use a separate or different method for communication, and which resulted in the inability to communicate between intervendors. So what I'm trying to say, Apple use its own methods for communication and Dell use its own method for communication. So they kind of like devise their own way of sending data on the internet. So because there was no similarity, because kind of like they use their own process, so they were unable to share information with each other. So this inter-vendor communication was not a possible thing when we were actually communicating uh, before OSI model. So OSI model, or the organization that is behind the development of OSI model, that is ISO, International Standardization Organization, studied this trend and they came up with a model that is known as OSI model. Now, OSI model is really simple if you look into it. So there are totally 7 layers. The first layer that we see, the 7th layer, is actually the application layer. And after the application layer, there is this presentation layer. And after this presentation layer, there is session layer. Then there is transport layer. Then after transport layer, there is this network layer. Then after network layer, we have data link. And after data link layer, we have physical layer, the first layer. So when we are actually communicating, we follow different approach. So when you are actually sending data, you always start from the 7th layer and you go through the each layer, the physical layer. So this is when you are actually sending. But when you are actually receiving this information, when you are receiving any information, let's say from your friend or someone else, so you follow the opposite approach. Here is the session layer. Then the 4th one is again the transport layer. 3rd one is the network layer. 2nd one is the data link layer. And the first one is again the physical layer. So when you are actually receiving, you start from the layer 1 and you climb all the way up to layer 7. So this is the method that actually happens when we are communicating. So whenever we are sending, so you might be on your system and you might be browsing the internet. Even when you are actually browsing the internet, you might be sharing some sort of information, exchanging some sort of information between you and the server. Suppose you are connected to Google. So you might be connected to a Google server and you might be requesting few things or sending few things to the Google server. So when that happens, when you log into your machine, you open a browser, you type in the URL and you hit enter. So your OSI model kicks in and it works. So let me explain you this purpose of the 7 layer. So we will start with the application layer. Okay, so the application layer is responsible for data collection. So it collects user data. Okay, it collects user data. So like I said, whenever we are browsing internet, so what you do, you go to your particular web browser, you put in the URL and you hit the enter button. So the moment you type in those words, that is exactly your data. And that is what the application layer collects and processes down to the lower level. Now, after the presentation layer, after the application layer, we come towards the presentation layer. So as per the name, presentation layer presents the data in network. Okay, so it simply presents the data in network. So presentation layer presents the data in the network. Then after that, the session layer comes into play. Now, session layer, as per the name suggests, it actually creates a session between sender and destination. So when you are communicating the sender and let's say receiver, it requires a session. So unless the session, we won't be able to communicate with them. So session layer is actually responsible for creating that session. Now, if we move further, the fourth layer is actually transport layer. So transport layer is pretty simple actually. So it ensures end-to-end connection. So it makes sure that you are connected to your partner or whoever you want to communicate with. Okay, so it ensures the end-to-end connection. Then comes the network layer. Okay, so network layer is actually responsible for routing the data. That means taking the data from your network to another network. And after that, we have the data link layer, the second layer of the OSI model. Now, if we talk about data link layer, so data link layer is actually used for the delivery of our data. Okay, and the last layer is the physical layer. Okay, which actually converts your digital data into electrical bits or electrical pulse or radio signal. So if we are using a wireless, it simply converts your data into radio signal. So this is what your OSI model does. So this is the 7-layer and the responsibility of the 7 layers. So whenever we are trying to send information from one device to another device, our data or our device follow through these 7 layers. Now for these layers, there are some protocols that helps us in doing these things. So in order to collect data, there is a protocol. In order to present data, there is a protocol. And for every 7 layer, there are certain types of protocol which makes this communication possible. So with the OSI model, now we have a clear vision or clear understanding of the whole networking process. So it is beneficial for network engineer as well as the vendors also. Now the vendors can follow this 7-layer approach whenever they are trying to create any network technology or any communication technology. Okay, so every vendor, whether we are talking about Apple, whether we are talking about Dell or any other vendor, they all use this layered approach whenever they are trying to create some networking or communication technology. Now, to get it more simply, you can actually compare the OSI model to your postal service. So we all in our life at some point might have used postal service. So we can actually compare it. Okay, so mostly whenever we are trying to communicate via postal service, so we are actually sending letters, mails, or also known as traditional mail or snail mail. So what happens is that you write a letter. First of all, you write a letter. Now this letter writing can be used to explain the application layer where you are actually putting the data. Now, simply if you wrote your letter on a piece of paper, so you cannot just simply send it like that. So what you do, you buy an envelope. So you put your letter into an envelope. Okay, so this is your presentation layer. Okay, so this is your presentation layer. Okay, then you go to your post box or wherever you want, you drop your letter. So you drop your letter to a box. So this is your kind of like a session layer. Okay, and on your letter, you might add some stamps. Okay, so if you don't add your stamps, the postal service might not be able to transfer it. So you add some stamps. So this is your transport layer, which ensure that my letter will be sent to the specified location. Then you add the location, or say you mention the state or you mention the city on which you want to send the data. So this is actually your network layer. And suppose if you are sending it to someone, then you add the proper address. You add a proper address onto your letter. Now this is actually a resemblance of data link layer. And then when you finally post it, okay, and the letter is out for delivery. Okay, so in delivery, it follows different paths. So we can compare it with the physical layer. So that's it. That's how you can actually relate the OSI model to a actual postal service. And I believe like this might be helpful for you to realizing or memorizing this OSI model. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And in case you have any doubts, anything that you would like to say, or anything you would like to ask, please put your questions in the comment section. Thank you very much, guys.